cell phones, if you would, please. Let Coach make an opening statement. We'll open up for questions.
You ready? Got to Alabama here, 3:30 kick at Williams-Brice. It's a great opportunity for our football team and our program. Got a lot of respect for their program and obviously Nick. Offensively, it all starts with the quarterback, too, is an outstanding player, very accurate with the football, close to 80% this year as far as his completion percentage. He has legs. He can create off-rhythm plays, as we say, that are very difficult to defend. He's thrown it to a really skilled group down the field, but he's a really good football player. Receiver, Judy and Waddle and Ruggs and Smith are all very talented guys that can run extremely well on the top end. But also guys in the underneath coverages can catch the ball in space and make plays for him, and they've made a bunch for him in the last couple of years. So, we've got our work cut out for us as far as that's concerned. They've recruited really well at the running back position, big backs. They're always big up front on the offensive line. Defensively, very physical, tough to move up front. Davis and Dale's, as a freshman, is going to be a really good player for him. Ray, then the two guys on the edges, Lewis and Jennings, really create some fast twitch rush for you on the perimeter, and they're really talented on the back end. So really well coached, obviously, on defense. Special teams, they've got good specialists, and Waddle as a returner probably is as good a guy as there is in our league and maybe in the country. So we got our work cut out for us as far as teams is concerned, and a lot of space plays that they'll try and create. Injury-wise, Rendricus ran today. I don't know. I'll know more as the week continues to go, but did not practice with us, but was running, and that was good to see with our training staff. Eric Douglas, I think, should be fine. He didn't do a whole lot today, but expect him to do a little bit more tomorrow. Deshaun Fenwick may be out this weekend. He has a shoulder, and Brad Johnson struggling with a groin. Other than that, I think we're going to be okay. This game, the University of South Carolina is teaming up with Curing Kids Cancer, which is a nonprofit devoted to funding cutting-edge pediatric cancer therapies. And the Owen family started this foundation in 2003 when they lost their son Killian, and they've raised over $15 million for childhood cancer research. And I encourage you to visit curingkidscancer.org for more information. It's a great organization. The Owen family are fantastic people, and they're making a difference as far as pediatric cancer is concerned in the research for that. So certainly we need to support that, and I'll open it up for any questions.
Raise your hand. I'll give the microphone to you, David.
Well, just looking at Tua's abilities in the pocket, just looking at the defense scheme with the pass rush, do you have to always drill into your guys' heads, you got to watch out for him because he can make you miss? I mean, do you have to scale back maybe on the pass rush plans?
Well, you scale back and give him a lot of time, it's an issue as well. But you just got to do a nice job with discipline in your rush lanes, constrict the pocket, don't let him evade, and especially to his left hand, which I think he's a very effective when he goes to his left. But again, his ability to extend plays and what we call off-the-rhythm plays is pretty much uncanny as far as his field for down the field of knowing when to run it, when to throw it, to buy time. We need to do a good job of staying in coverage, but more than anything, constricting the lanes up front.
Well, what did you learn from Nick at LSU, and what kind of separates him from just everybody else in terms of coaching?
Well, I learned a lot. I mean, as far as, obviously from a scheme standpoint, I think, you got to be philosophically aligned with him as far as the things how he sees the game played, offense, defense, and special teams. So obviously from a scheme standpoint, I learned a lot. But, the evaluation process and the recruiting, as far as the critical factors we look for and define for every position. And I think really even took that a step further when I went to the Miami Dolphins and was a part of the draft and going and working players out and really narrow down exactly what we look for by position in the evaluation process, which I think has really helped me and our programs moving forward as far as those things. As far as all-season program, how we ran the all-season program, we do very similar things in the all-season program. How we install in training camp, how we install in spring ball, how we do spring ball. Our summer programs are very similar as far as the players are concerned and what we do. How we practice is very similar to what we did when I was with Nick. So, we've carried over a lot of things that obviously work extremely well, but I learned a lot.
Nick's offense has kind of matured a lot in recent years, developed and changed. How different is it to game plan for an offense like he has right now than maybe when you were with him or when you were at Florida trying to game plan?
Well, I think that, Colin, they have evolved a little bit, but I think that goes back to the players and the talent level they have at each position. Obviously, they want to take advantage of the quarterback. now, as opposed to maybe in years past when the running game with Henry and Richardson and the different guys, Ingram, were a little bit stronger of what they wanted to do. So I think it's all about taking advantage of the guys in your offense. They're extremely talented at the receiver position right now and at the quarterback position. And I think that's where you see that obviously the touches that they're trying to create for Judy and Waddle and those guys now is what they're accentuating on offense.
Just one quick follow-up on the injuries. Is Keir Thomas expected back this week?
No.
Against Nick's system, and I guess your system too, since they're fairly similar, how important is wide receiver play in those one-on-one matchups to be effective?
As far as defending an offense?
No, if you're going to move the ball offensively against Nick, how well do your wide receivers have to play?
Well, there's going to be some 50-50 ball situations on both sides of the ball. And offensively, you need to make the plays, and then defensively, you need to make the plays depending on what side of the ball we're on when the ball goes up. But there's going to be middle field coverage in this game, and you're going to have opportunities to create explosives down the field in one-on-one situations.
Is that something you talk to Brian Edwards about and you sort of challenge him with, or do you just think he understands that and it's just like a regular week?
Brian understands that. He understands. He's a very bright guy. He understands coverage-wise, and we give all of our guys starting this morning a breakdown percentage-wise on what we're going to see middle field and split safety and those sort of things. And he understands in middle field coverage he's going to have some opportunities.
Coach, through 2 weeks, you guys have improved the tackling from week 1 to week 2. Obviously, Alabama is one of those teams in the nation where they can kind of get those yards after contact, and they kind of emphasize going to get that contact. Have you emphasized this week that the tackling will have to ramp up another level, and they'll have to emphasize that again on Saturday?
We emphasize it every week, every day, and we work on it every day in our individual defensively, and anytime, a lot of times with our offensive players during special teams period, we work on tackling as well. So that's not something that's anything new. We still have some young guys that need to bring their feet more on tackles. We had a couple space tackles that we missed, and that was mostly young players. They just got to learn that in this league, if you stop your feet, you have zero chance. You know, that old theory when I was growing up and coming up in Pop Warner, break down. Well, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. Because you stop your feet against a really good athlete, you have zero chance at making the tackle. And generally, we're tackling somebody who's a better athlete than us. So we've got to bring our feet on tackles, leverage the ball the correct way. If you leverage the ball the correct way and you miss the tackle, I've got no problem. I'll never say a word about it, because generally you've made the running back stop his feet, or whoever's carrying the ball stop his feet, and we've got guys coming to the football. And if that happens, we're going to be okay. But, it's just, to me, it's about leverage and bringing your feet. And I thought we did a much better job from week 1 to week 2, except for some younger guys that got to do a better job of that.
Coach, through 2 games with the adjustments coming out of the North Carolina game and a change at quarterback, were you hoping to have a little bit better sense as to where this football team was heading into this game, especially going from playing the level of competition Charleston Southern was versus the level you're going to see this week?
Well, I think that I've got a pretty comfortable feel about where we are. We didn't get the result that we wanted, and we didn't finish the game in week 1. That's the bottom line. And I feel comfortable about this football team and where we are. There's obviously been some things, like in all seasons, that have occurred that are somewhat out of our control, that we've got to be able to adjust and adapt, and that's why you recruit, and that's why we're in the situation we're in.
Well, you mentioned about right here how much you learned from Nick during your time with him. How much of a plus is that for you when it comes to preparing for him? Or does that go out the window because you look at the other side, he knows a lot about you and your philosophy?
I don't think it has a whole lot of bearing on the game. It's the players that line up between the white lines when the game kicks off, and it's 11 in Alabama and there's 11 from South Carolina, and those guys will determine the outcome of the game. And obviously we got to do a great job of preparing our team, but the familiarity on each side of things I think is a little blown out of proportion as far as those things are concerned. You can overthink this thing too, and I haven't worked for Nick since 2005. It's a long time ago.
John?
None of Nick's former assistants have beaten him. Is it as simple as his teams are really good and it's hard to do, or is it more to it than that?
No, I think that it's more to it than that. You got to beat Alabama. And at the end of the day, John, they're not going to beat themselves. They're well coached. They've got good players. But you've got to go beat Alabama. You got to have an aggressive mindset when you go into the ball game. You got to do the simple things really well in the game, and you can't start trying to play out of what you normally do. At the end of the day, there's going to be 4 to 6 plays in this game that are going to determine the outcome of the game, just like every other game we play. And we've got to outwork this football team for 60 minutes and be in position in those 4 to 6 plays to win the game. And that's no different than any other game. And don't treat it any different than any other game.
Will, what can establishing a strong run game against a defense that's probably going to try to put a lot of pressure on Ryan this weekend?
Well, there's no question to be able to – you can't get into a one-dimensional game against this group because they rush the passer extremely well, especially with Lewis and Jennings on the edge, and they've got great push in the middle with Davis, and Dale is a young player in Ray. So, you know, to be able to run the football is certainly something we're planning on trying to be able to do in the game.
Do you remember 9 years ago, you guys were on bye when you were at Texas, and this game happened? Do you remember if you were watching Mighty Chance that game? No.
I don't remember.
How much of people just asked you about that? And
It's
how
impressive you knew we were on a bye week, though.
We got the internet right here.
That's pretty neat stuff.
Yeah. But how much does that
9
come
years
up?
ago, I was supposed to remember on a Saturday what I was doing. If it was a game, I probably could give you a rundown, but I can't on an off weekend. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
How much does that just come up, that game, and hearing about that, the fans' excitement about it? And
Oh, yeah,
having a chance
it was an awesome game. It was an awesome victory here at University of South Carolina. Beat the #1 ranked team in the country. There's no doubt about it. It was a great game, a great atmosphere, and I know it'll be a great atmosphere on Saturday as well.
Well, how much have you looked at Alabama's film from the national championship game last year to maybe look at some of their tendencies and what Clemson did to shut that down?
Yeah, I mean, you always, you know, especially in your first 4 games, you're constantly watching old tape and looking at different things that may have worked and why they worked or why they didn't work. And obviously, there's been a change in coordinator on the offensive side of the ball. So there's there's going to be some changes as far as how some things are administered. They're going to do what they do in the run game. I think some things in the passing game have obviously changed. So you just got to make the adjustments as far as what you see and then what you've seen in his history of the way he's called games. Well, I mean, again, I think that it takes a total team effort, you know, and obviously being able to score points is a part of that changes the game and the complexion of the game, you know, for Alabama offensively. So it works hand in hand, and being able to try and keep the quarterback off rhythm as best you can. But you know, it's a team game, doing a nice job on special teams, creating vertical field position through teams. All of those things work together.
Well, not to overthink this Will Muschamp, Nick Saban thing, but what percentage of the way you run your program, from football stuff to recruiting to player availability to the media, is based on what Nick Saban does?
I would say a vast majority of what we do is based on what I've learned from him.
75%, 80%?
I don't know. I'm not good at percentages. I wasn't good in math. You can take a shot at it. I'll agree with it. There you go. That's
Well, two things. Did this team have to you talked about adjusting and things like that. Did this team have to adjust again this week when when they found out that Jake wasn't going to come back this year? And what is Ryan's mindset heading into, obviously, what's the biggest game of his career coming up?
No, I think our team understood, and I told them the next morning after I found out that Jake was going to be out for an extended time, regardless of whether we had surgery or not. So our players understood that. But I think Ryan's got a really good mindset. He's a guy that comes in the building all the time. He works extremely hard. He watches a lot of tape. He'll have a good mindset going into the game. He's a very confident young man in his abilities to help us move the ball and score points. And that's what it's all about. But he's got a lot of confidence about him in a very positive way.
How do you think your defensive line matches up with their offensive line?
Well, I think we're much better than we showed in our first ball game, and I think that we'll play much better. We'll see how the matchup manifests itself on Saturday afternoon, but I think we're certainly capable of playing better.
When you go into a game against a team the caliber of Alabama, do you have maybe not exactly a checklist, but certain things that you say we absolutely have to do and we absolutely cannot do to make sure this game is competitive?
Well, no. I mean, I think at the end of the day that you go into every game thinking in terms of on offense, defense, and special teams, things that you need to have happen in the game, and some things you'd like to be able to avoid in the game, which the obvious things of turnovers and things like that, and giving up explosive plays. But that's true in every game.
I guess I know you guys don't bring to the ground in practice and tackling. I know there's a lot of positives that come from that, but are there any drawbacks to potentially doing that at all in terms of game day stuff?
I just think, Colin, it's just it's very difficult. Number one, we now have NCAA regulations as far as tackling to the ground and the number of days you've got to have between. But I'm not a big fan of that during the season because of injury. Just the bottom line, you get guys hurt. When guys are on the ground, that's when injuries normally occur, and we can't afford that. I don't know that any team can at this time.
Well, Ryan's second start against the number 2 team in the country, one of the most iconic in football. What can you and the players do to kind of help him? I know you said he's got all the intangibles, but what can you guys do, because it's such a big spot for him, to kind of help him along in this process?
No different than last week, and obviously the opponent's much different. But play well around him. We got to obviously protect the passer. Let's create something in the run game. Let's catch the ball down the field. Defensively, let's gain some field position, some momentum in the game. Do a great job on special teams, controlling the vertical field position. So all of those things are all the same for every week to help, whether it's a veteran player or a young player, be more successful, and that's what we're trying to do.
When Nick spoke yesterday, he was complimentary of your special teams units. He said it's probably the best collection of players on special teams they'll play all year. Where's your confidence in all of those units and how far it's come through 4 years?
Oh, wow, we've come a long way. At the end, when we first got here, it wasn't, starters didn't think they were supposed to play special teams. Now they've realized the importance of the vertical field position, the momentum of the game, changing the field position, how important that is. And you look on our punt team, Shy and JC are our gunners. It's 2 of our better football players on our team. Brian Evers is our punt returner. You look at our start and kickoff team, they're all starters across the board. As far as those things are same with our punt team. So our guys understand the importance of teams and understand that there's a third of the game is involved in special teams and the importance of that. And Coleman Hutzler and Kyle Krantz do a fantastic job with our players and preparing them for games.
Coach, with no disrespect to Charleston Southern, but for this upcoming weekend, for these younger guys, they're going to be in an environment that they've never been in.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do to tell those guys to kind of just get them ready, or is that something you usually let maybe like the seniors kind of talk them through?
More than that, I had talked to the older guys to make sure if the young guys are going to be in the situation in the moment to make sure that they talk to them a little bit about it, and again help those guys through the nerves and all that kind of stuff that happens as you go into a game like this. Yeah, I guess. It was good. I wasn't asked to do a lot back then, but
I'm guessing the answer will be no. But have you heard about the California State Assembly passing the bill that would allow players to get compensated for likeness and all that stuff?
No.
No.
Just what kind of a recruiting showcase can a game and an atmosphere like you guys are going to have here be for this program?
Well, I think it's great. Our fans will be there loud and proud. I know that, and we need to go play well.
Well, do you think guys like J.C. Israel, really any of your defensive backs, get a little bit extra, juice, motivation of playing a guy like Jerry Jeudy who won the Biletnikoff last year?
Absolutely. You want to go against the best. That's why you want to come to a place like South Carolina, and week in, week out, you're on the best stages in college football.
Is that something that you like to do when you were a safety?
No, I didn't like covering. Get me on the slow guy. Find me a tight end.
Obviously, you've coached a lot of these big games before. Do you change your coaching mindset in it from the past in terms of, do you do anything differently because of the nature of the opponent in terms of a saying you do, or you mix things up in practice or anything like that? And have you adjusted that strategy over the course of your coaching career?
And I'll say this, and one of the many things I learned from Nick is you treat every game the same. And that's the way he approaches his organization. That's the way he approaches every game to maintain balance and not the ebbs and flows of how you approach a game. So you treat one game really, really important, and the next week it's not important. They're all important. And obviously the players, we had probably more juice at a Tuesday practice this morning than we've had, and that's normal. That's part of it. And I always talk in terms of the build-up to game day to Saturday afternoon at 3:30. But one of the many things I learned from him was, the players understand the important games, and they understand that. But you as a coach have to approach all of them the same. because then your players will start choosing and picking when they think it's important to play and when it's not important to play. And then you create the ups and downs in your performance, and you don't have consistency in your performance. And I agree with him 100% on those things.
Well, Nick's as good as anybody at teaching the hand-to-hand combat, defensive backs to wide receivers, moving the elbow and stuff. How important are those battles going to be on Saturday?
Well, I mean, again, you win a lot, in bump and run. You win and lose on the line of scrimmage. And so when you're able to win on the line and stay on top of a receiver in an outside release, or if you want to be on a low hip situation on an inside stem, depending on your help from the safety, all of those things are really important to win on the line. And, when you play against guys like this, and I throw Brian and Shai and some of our receivers in the same category, if you lose on the line of scrimmage, it may not be good if the quarterback sees it, because it's going to be a vertical ball down the field most likely. So we got to do a good job keeping guys cut off on the line of scrimmage.
Well, how important is it to have a guy like Tavian, in the locker room who's actually gone up against Alabama before? Does that make any sort of difference at all? I know you guys probably don't ask him much, but just to have a guy who's been in that position before?
Well, I think so, sure. I mean, I think a lot of our guys have talked to him about his experiences and those sort of things, and I think that certainly is beneficial for us. And, but Tavian's a very bright guy, stays to himself, has been a great teammate since he's been here, and I'm really happy to have him in the organization.
Well, there were times during the recruiting process where Ryan had talked about possibly starting this game if Jake had gone pro. You mentioned last week he was ready for sort of the moment of that first start because of his maturity. Does the fact that he's kind of thought about this game particularly for a long time, does that have any impact? Is that something that can be good for him in terms of his approach to it?
I don't know about that. I go back and watch him prepare in the weight room, in the film room, and on the practice field is going to get him more ready to play this game than the other.
Anything else for Coach? Good? Pretty good?
All righty.